It's been a busy year of work for John Paino between his work on Sharp Objects, which is eligible in this Emmy cycle, and season 2 of Big Little Lies, which is about to premiere on HBO. John, tell us a little bit about Sharp Objects. What were some of the underlying thematic materials that you wanted to explore through your production design?
What I usually do, to me, my job is about creating atmosphere and not just, smoke it's about tone. So what I wanted to explore with Sharp Objects is a kind of Southern Gothic, because it is a Southern Gothic, but not the Tennessee Williams typical thing. I wanted it to be colorful and lurid in a sense, and harken back to some tropes in Southern Gothic. It certainly has those tropes in it, and the book that the show is based on. But I wanted it to be a kind of like showing a hollowed out contemporary South, and a Gothic that wasn't a Tim Burton kind of thing. I wanted it to be realistic, but I also wanted it to be lurid and colorful.
So I guess the big set piece, no pun intended, is the mansion at the center of the film. Talk a little bit about that and the design of it.
In the book, the mansion is actually white and just kind of run down. I wanted it to be as if, Adora is wealthy, and I thought that she would certainly, she'd hire an interior decorator from Charleston or Atlanta, and it would be contemporary and would be modern, and it also would be a jewel box for her. It's her fantasy world. It's her place where she has drinks every night and dances with her, husband, and it is different than the washed out colors of Wind Gap, and I thought it should feel modern and not typically antique and old wood, and it has those elements to it, but our fabulous decorator Amy Wells brought in an antique bent and historical things. There's a lot of that, pictures of the house when it was being built, but there's also a very modern luxe, L-U-X-E kind of decor to it as well.
And so how did that house fit into the general look of the town overall? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
It contrasted, actually. I was, when I was starting, I always put together mood boards, and very much about color, and having a palette that relates with the characters. And I was, there was this great photograph of a Rothschild heiress who goes into her parlor with this fabulous Degournay wallpaper. And the wallpaper struck me as being swampy and poisonous and fecund. And I used that as a motif. I took some of the colors from it. We actually got that actual wallpaper, which isn't easy to do. And it became, a symbol of the swampy, stickiness of Sharp Objects. And she's a poisoner, and it has these poisonous arsenic colors in it as well. So the town, has kind of been bled dry by her family, and everyone works for her. So the town is as washed out as far as colors, and the richness and the greens and the swampiness is in her house and in nature, in the exterior.
Right. Obviously, there's a mystery at the center of this thing, or there's a lot of kind of mysterious things going on. Yes. Were there any kind of hidden details that you put into your work as maybe like hints of the mystery that was unfolding?
Well, there are visual cues throughout of words that Camille carves words on herself, but she also kind of, wherever she goes, she's always writing things in dirt, and we would carve things into desks, and John Mark played a lot with that. He added a bunch of that in post, and wherever we could and wherever we had the foresight to do it. we would put it into the settings, and it's in the murals and in the town and in the bar. There are bits and pieces of it everywhere. We also, in Adora's house, we would, do things, like have knives displayed in certain places, or we would have, jars filled with, as if Amy got a whole bunch of great antique glass jars and bell jars and filled them up with colored water that looked like an old pharmacy to, again, making an allusion to the fact that she suffers from a syndrome where she's poisoning her children. So there were things like that that were definitely put into the decor.
You mentioned wanting to have sort of a realism to the designs,
Yes.
and that's typical of all the work that you do with Jean-Marc Vallée, in both features and in television.
Mhm.
Um, can you just talk a bit about working with him and how that relationship has grown?
It's, he tends to want things to be natural. He doesn't like sets. I think I've slowly gotten him used to sets a little bit. He is very much improvisational with the actors. He also is, he will see things and then expound upon them. You have to, like we give him 360 world, even with sets, locations, everything, because he tends to be naturalistic. Um, I use this highfalutin word, this poetic realism. We want a realism, but we want to have a gauze over it. We want to have it stripped a little bit, or we want to, like poetry, you want to get to the essence of things. So we don't have a lot of clutter. We have a beautiful clutter. We edit the world. And that's what, and then adding color to that through the characters is kind of, our modus operandi, so to speak, with
Would you
him.
say then that this was sort of like a departure for him in some ways, since it's a little more stylized?
It is. It is. I think it's also just the nice thing about it, it's much more realized in the sense that it feels like a very complete world. I'm sorry, I don't know how to turn that beep off. It feels like a very complete world that everything is sticky. And everyone has the same kind of stain on them, which is great. That's all one can hope for.
Well, it really does a good job of creating a world, which is it's the same kind of thing that you guys did with Big Little Lies in the first season of that. Creating this whole world of Monterey, California, and I mean, obviously, these are real places, Missouri and California, that people can go visit, but it feels as if you're transported into a different kind of world in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's kind of like a distilled prism of that world. It is bucolic, and that's there, but we did, a good 50% of that show is built on stage as well. So it is, it is again distillation of what's there and kind of shining it, kind of shining the gems a little bit, polishing them a bit. But then you want to find that sweet spot where you're not, this doesn't become too stylized. There is again sorry, this is just my term for a poetic realism, to like having a stylization but not wearing it on the nose, and it's not so obvious.
How much, and I mean, I guess this can also tie into your work on Big Little Lies in the upcoming season as well. How much does character inform the work that you do?
Oh, very much. When we do mood boards, they are based on the characters, and I always like to get the costume designer involved and very much the DP. But with costumes are character. So I always am curious as to what that person is putting them in. And, again, like for Adora's character in Sharp Objects, I found a lot of heiresses and Southern belles and things like that, and just looked at them, and sent them along to, costumes. And, I want them, I want our world to complement them. And it's very, very much so. I mean, that's, again, Jean-Marc being very character and working with the actors, that's very important. We always are talking about that.
Let me ask you about the upcoming season of Big Little Lies.
Mhm.
I don't want to spoil anything since it hasn't come on yet. But I mean, when you completed season one, and you know there were rumblings about there being another season. I mean, can you talk about were you ready to kind of jump back into that world? Did you expect to do it?
Nobody expected to do it, and it was, we didn't save anything. We didn't, we wrapped everything out, but we didn't save anything. So Amy and our construction department, we all had to start from scratch again to get everything. None of us expected to do it again, and I think it was interesting to, now the knives are out for the ladies. So it was interesting to, how are we going to take, the majority of them stay in the same environments? What are we going to do to make it a little different, show that the characters have different problems, more problems? Some people are going up in the world, some are going down. How do we show that with a lot of sets that are staying the same? We did build some fun things. One thing I can't talk about, unfortunately, that's at the end. That's a big, huge, fun set. But we did build some new things, and they helped. But I think, for the second season, the challenge was, what do we do to show their progression of, their time, their troubles, their station in life has changed, and all of that. That seemed so perfect in the first season.
And you're working with a new director this time, Andrea Arnold, another exceptional talent who's got a style all her own. What was it like working with her?
She is similar to John Mark in that she is very much works with the actors intuitively and is very open to improvisation. She wanted to bring the show out into the world more. She wanted it to be some more things in nature, more things in the coast. She wanted them to be more in the actual areas in Monterey than John Mark did. John Mark likes creating something that's a little more hermetic, and Andrea likes to walk around. We did a lot more things in the woods, in the forest. Our new cafe, our new coffee shop for the girls to, conspire in and talk, was actually built on Lover's Point, which is a very scenic point in Monterey, which was really fun to make and was really great to build something actually in Monterey, which we didn't do in the first season.
One of the interesting things about this show, and I guess I can talk about it in terms of the first season, and I won't really spoil anything in the second, is the way you look at this sort of class system within the show and within the characters. Can you talk about that and how that affected your designs?
John Mark really wanted them to have a relationship with the water and also how close they are to it. Mm. But conversely, he wanted them to be, go from a ground level. Like in Big Sur, the bestest, nicest places are on top of these cliffs. So Celeste and Renata are on top of the cliffs, Madeline's kind of in the middle, and Jane isn't even near the water. So they had their proximity and their closeness was a big part of how we picked our locations and also the color schemes. Celeste's house is beautiful and wonderful, but like a hideout. It's in a beautiful cove. It really, when you go there, it feels like, she's off the beaten path and hiding to a certain point. Whereas, Renata's house is a big show house. It's like Scarface. It's like the staircase that goes nowhere. It's just to walk up and down. So, again, those characters, where they are in the world, affected where we looked for the locations, even though, some of them were in LA proper and some were in Monterey. And that also affected how we built their interiors, like Celeste's interior is built for the most part, and Jane's.
Were you guys surprised by the overall general enthusiasm that this show was met with? I think everyone expected it to be good at the very least, but were you guys surprised that it was such a phenomenon?
Yes, I was, because it wasn't really something that John Mark, at first I wasn't sure what he was thinking and what he was going to. He's incredibly great at finding the essence of things and also with music and, tone, giving them a slant and a bent and a point of view that is very much above what I thought the material was. And I was surprised, very much so. And we were all surprised because, they swore up and down that they weren't going to do a second season, which was pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm sure seeing it win all those Emmy awards too was kind of a nice surprise.
That made a big yes. But I think that to John Mark's credit, he really took this material and he added a lot of things that are now, in the news, like the Me Too movement and, relationships and, women's position in the world. He added a lot of that to the story and to the dialogue in it, which was present and amazing, quite frankly. And he also had these incredible actresses who, were willing to explore it.
Right. You're a previous Emmy nominee yourself for your work on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. You've also been nominated by the Art Directors Guild for both of these shows that we're talking about. What does that recognition mean to you?
Well, it's really great. There's so much really, really good TV. It's always great to be recognized by people who are in the trenches and working like you are and working under deadlines and budget restrictions. And TV is so, I mean, God, in the last 10 years, I was talking to someone the other day, and when we do kitchens now, we do real marble. We do real, we are, the bar is risen so high, and I don't just mean on shows that have huge budgets and that are period, like Game of Thrones. Everything, the bar is really set high, and you really, there's so many good people working in this medium now that you really have to bring your A game always. And I'm fortunate because I'm doing it with people. My crew is one of the best. My decorator, Amy Wells, construction, my art directors, James Truesdale and Austin Gorg, and everyone I've worked with since the first season of Big Little Lies. I've worked with the same crew through to the morning show, which I just wrapped. I'm very lucky to have them, and they are just the best in their field, and that helps a lot.
Well, John, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations on all your work this
year. Thank you. I hope it was okay. My little dog came up for a second.
my dog comes into some interviews as well, so viewers are used to it.
My pleasure, Zachary. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you at home for watching. Make sure you click the like and subscribe button below, and make sure you visit us at goldderby.com for all the latest Emmy news.